Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Tonight on Our News, concern over the use of AstraZeneca vaccine as the world marks 1 year since the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus pandemic. A 7-day cruise will call the Bahamas home, and all passengers must be vaccinated before setting sail. Plus, a man wanted for armed robbery is still on the run 1 year later. Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, Denmark, Iceland and Norway temporarily suspending the use of Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine as a precautionary measure, according to CNN, following reports of blood clots. This as the European Medicine Regulator, EMA, has maintained that there is no indication the vaccination caused these conditions, which are not listed as a side effect of the vaccine. AstraZeneca released a statement noting that patient safety is of highest priority. The Bahamas received a donation of 20,000 AstraZeneca vaccines from India yesterday. Consultant Physician Staff Association President Dr. Sabrika Pinder-Butler says local health officials should keep an eye on developments.
I'm told by our Prime Minister on our own vaccination program related to the same vaccine. I would trust that we too would be looking to see what comes out of these investigations, and certainly something for us to keep in mind as we embark upon this process.
The Ministry of Health today issuing a statement noting that the vaccines received by the Bahamas on Wednesday are different from the batch reportedly used in the affected countries, and the vaccines received by the Bahamas will continue to meet the stringent regulatory approval standards. Well, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis saying that residents who are vaccinated will likely be able to gather in groups with each other.
The recommendation is that once all individuals are vaccinated, for example, if all of us here in Parliament have been vaccinated, then we can behave normally. No mask, no social gathering, nothing, we're normal, provided all of us are. And that's the recommendation. So in terms of restaurants, once there's evidence that all have been vaccinated, then they need no mask, they can socialize, there's no social distancing, they can laugh, they can dance, they can do whatever.
The government's plan for the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine is expected to be released by the Vaccine Committee on Friday. Well, March 11th marks 1 year since the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus pandemic. At that time, there were more than 118,000 cases in 114 countries, and 4,291 people had lost their lives. Fast forward to 1 year later, as we enter the second year of the pandemic, the world has recorded 117.5 million cases since the start of the pandemic, and 2.6 million people have died. The effects of the pandemic are still being felt today around the world and in the Bahamas.
It was, I guess, the confirmation of our worst fear. However, it didn't just start on that date for us in the healthcare sector.
We continue to live with that fear because patients were not certain whether the hospital was a safe place. And we continue, like I say, to deal with that. But that was a part of our beginning.
Hospital leadership in the public and private sectors still see the ripple effects the pandemic has had on how care is delivered and how those delivery systems adapt to the present circumstances. But that's not all. In The Breakdown, an RTV special, we examine the path to recovery.
It was a trying time for the business community. It still is, because the business community still reels from the impact of COVID-19.
268 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been distributed around the world so far. The rollout is expected to begin shortly in the Bahamas. The Breakdown airs Monday, March 15th at 8 p.m. on RTV. In other news, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis firing back at opposition leader Philip Davis over claims that the government may have shared the timeline for the next general election with an international ratings agency.
Our leading opposition had accused me of betraying my country, and he said that I had discussed and informed Standards and Poor's as to when the election would be held. Mr. Speaker, that is an outright fabrication.
In Parliament Wednesday evening, Davis told parliamentarians the November 2020 report from Standard & Poor's refers to a 2021 election in the Bahamas. Based on that, the PLP leader says it seems government is sharing information about election timing with ratings agencies before informing the Bahamian public.
I added no such information to Standard & Poor's. I am not a betrayer. The election is not due until May of next year. When that changes, the Bahamian populace would know. Be they given 3 weeks notice, 4 weeks notice, 6 weeks notice, they would know. But for all intents and purposes now, the election is due May of next year. If he or Standard & Poor's can get into my brain or my head, then they can determine, they would know exactly what my thinking and what was my thinking.
Well, one of the first cruise ships to set sail since the pandemic shut down cruise lines will be calling port in the Bahamas. Crystal Cruises is set to return to the seas in July with an all-Bahamas cruise. Jillian Gray tells us more.
The Crystal Serenity is setting sail to the Bahamas. The cruise ship is the first to home port in the Bahamas and the first cruise ship to set sail after the coronavirus brought all cruise ships to a standstill last year. Crystal Cruises interim president and CEO Jack Anderson says they're not taking any chances. All passengers will be required to be vaccinated at least 14 days prior to boarding.
For us, that wasn't a difficult business decision because 80% of our prospective cruisers and past guests said they want that reassurance and safety.
The cruise will feature reduced capacity and will set sail from either Bimini or New Providence. With port of calls in Harbor Islands, San Salvador, Long Island, and Great Exuma, the tourism minister says health guidelines will be essential to keep Bahamians safe.
We're not worried, but we're not letting our guard down, and we're going to have all of our protocols in place to ensure that we don't, as your question suggests, lead to an outbreak into our very quaint and very lovely and very beautiful family of islands.
De Aguilar says the next few months will be used to prepare those islands.
We feel that the reintroduction of tourism into those islands will be received with some excitement. I'm sure there'll be 1 or 2 people that push back.
Tourism Director General Joy Gerberlu says she's looking forward to this new venture.
The family islands will benefit more particularly than see any side effect from having the introduction of cruise passengers to the islands.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jillian Gray.
Mostly clear skies outside the R News studios tonight. Greg Thompson has the latest over in the Weather Center.
Thanks, Christina. In our first look at weather, brought to you tonight by Ports International. For all your medical supplies and your equipment needs, breezy conditions continuing outside our studios still. Temperatures are in the low 70s, 73 outside our studios right now. East winds 15 knots, but those winds are gusting above 20 knots. So it's going to continue to be breezy for the rest of the evening. Satellite view around the region. Much improved conditions cloud-wise, but we do have some patchy clouds moving across the central Bahamas, frontal boundary near the southeast Bahamas, generating some isolated showers, possibly isolated thunderstorms across that area, but the breeze will continue for the rest of the evening. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Ahead on our news, the Deputy Prime Minister promises a crackdown on Abaco shantytowns. Stay with us.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
Two years after the signing of the Heads of Agreement, the much-anticipated environmental impact assessment for Disney's project at Lighthouse Point Eleuthera was released Wednesday. As Berthany McDermott tells us, officials expect the project will contribute significantly to the public purse.
Disney's Lighthouse Point project is expected to boost the country's gross domestic product by more than $800 million over the next 25 years, according to the 551-page environmental impact assessment released Wednesday. Disney's Vice President of Public Affairs, Kim Prunty, says due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the project is now expected to be completed by the first half of 2024, pending approvals.
The study showed that over a 25-year time horizon, the project would conservatively provide a more than $800 million increase in Bahamian GDP and a more than $355 million increase in government revenues, which exceeds concessions significantly.
The EIA comes 2 years after the signing of the heads of agreements with the Minnis-led administration. The development is anticipated to catapult employment opportunities, income, GDP, and government revenue.
Approximately 120 construction jobs, what I should say is at least 120 construction jobs, with an overall ratio of 80% Bahamians over the life of construction. We've already begun conversations with the Bahamian Contractors Association on this. At least 150 operations jobs, and those are well-paying with benefits in a range of disciplines and opportunity for advancement.
The Lighthouse Point project has been met with fierce pushback from environmentalists who have made attempts to block the development. Officials say the project is not expected to result in loss of terrestrial or marine biodiversity. Disney purchased 785 acres of the 919-acre site in 2019. The plan is to develop 20% of the property. Disney, meanwhile, says it is committed to strengthening the South Eleuthera community.
$250 to $400 million investment, and that has not changed despite the pandemic. This reflects our focus on the environment. Low-density development and sustainable building practices can be a bit more expensive than the traditional way of building things. We're donating 190 acres plus another 2.5 at the southernmost point of the property and conveying that to the government and people of the Bahamas.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Well, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Public Works Desmond Bannister sending a stern warning to shantytown residents of Abaco today, promising a crackdown on the farm shantytown. Jasmine Brown reports.
I want to give notice, Mr. Speaker, now today that there is going to be action. There is going to be decisive action in relation to that unregulated community.
That was the warning issued by the Deputy Prime Minister in the House of Assembly on Thursday morning. This is not the first time the government attempted to deal with the farm. Last July, Bannister told reporters the Office of the Attorney General was seeking to get the appropriate authorization to declare the farm shantytown. Several shanty towns were wiped out by Hurricane Dorian in September 2019. The government promised to clear the shanty towns left standing in the wake of the storm. The DPM says the Minnis administration has not forgotten its mandate, as he put the residents of that illegal community on notice that it will not be business as usual.
Before the end of this month, we're going to see action started.
Bannister visited the farm last month. He says he was concerned by what he found.
When I go in these unregulated communities, I see open septic tanks. Open. They're health hazards. You see wires running haphazardly. You see generators around in the communities that frighten you because you know what could happen. You know people can be electrocuted. You know there can be fires. At the time when we visited, there was a dead body of a man who had been killed by the vapors from his generator.
In addition to protecting the land, Bannister says he is also concerned about the impact unregulated communities can have on the environment. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
And an armed robbery suspect is still on the run 1 year after escaping from a police station. Jared Higgs tells us more.
One of the flyers is Tamal Bow, who is wanted for armed robbery and has been in circulation for a long time.
Chief Superintendent Shanta Knowles says police are still pursuing Bow more than a year after he escaped from the Carmichael Road police station. Last March, police reported that Bow, a resident of McKinney Drive, was assisting police with an investigation when he escaped lawful custody.
Another one that we're really interested in seeing, of course, is Christopher Blyden. He is wanted for shooting matters, and we definitely need to get him off the streets, and we need to talk with him.
Knowles, flanked by several high-ranking officers, highlighted several other suspects police are seeking for serious crimes.
So I'm appealing to the members of the public, especially those who know where these men are, to please give us the information so that we can bring them in and we can put them before the courts.
Police say most shootings and armed robberies are taking place in the Angleston area.
In these shooting incidences, most of the victims are associates.
Assistant Commissioner of Police Solomon Cash says police believe some of those murder and shooting victims are involved in gang activity.
They don't want any competition from that illegal operations. So we find that that's fueling a lot of the revenge and retaliation also outside of conflicts.
Cash says police have solved most of this year's murders. A recent killing in Pinewood Gardens is also close to being solved, he says.
We are in a position now that we have already identified a suspected person with that particular matter.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
When our news comes back from the break, bus drivers demanding action after they fall victim to armed robbery. Plus, Marcellus Hall has the latest in sports. The details when our news returns.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
This is our news. Welcome back. A woman who was reported missing last week has been found alive, according to police. Police and paramedics were called to a Stapleton Gardens home this afternoon where the missing woman, 43-year-old Nicola Sobish, was found. She was taken to hospital via ambulance. Investigations are ongoing. And safety concerns mounting for bus drivers here in the capital after a spike of armed robberies targeting public transportation. Giorgio Bain has more.
Bus drivers struggling to make ends meet 1 year into the COVID-19 pandemic are now facing another growing problem. Drivers say they hustle to make a daily wage, only to find themselves targets of armed robbers.
One of our members was shot last week Friday during the robbery. We also know that the police has not even interviewed him yet as to the matter at hand.
Some routes seem worse than others. Drivers who service the Market Street area along the 14 and 16 bus routes say they are wary about stopping for customers.
As a bus driver, I'm in fear because right now, being that you have to wear masks and stuff like that, sometimes these fellas have these masks hides their eyes. And you can't tell them take it off with the law now to do these things to wear masks right now.
Now, some drivers say they should be granted permission to bear arms to protect their businesses.
The bus drivers tote weapons. Sometimes when you reach downtown, police search buses, and if they see a bat or colors inside your vehicle, they'll take it from you. All right. Right now, as a business owner, what happened is now laws need to be changed for small business owners in protecting themselves. All right, we need to now allow business owners now to be toting concealed weapons. All right, in this day and age, you cannot protect yourself with a licensed shotgun inside your trunk.
Lou is sending this warning.
We are calling on all bus drivers now to be alert. Today is on 16 and 14. All right, tomorrow could be on 21, 7 or whatever it is. We're calling on passengers out there. All right, to be alert when on the bus and stuff, and make sure. Please conceal your items because right now they're only doing the bus drivers. Tomorrow they can start with the passengers also.
Bus drivers say they're not prepared to say what their next move is. They're simply hoping that members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force will work with them to provide the additional security measures. Reporting for Our News, I'm Giorgio Bain.
Meanwhile, officers from the Drug Enforcement Unit have noticed an increase in the number of illegal edible drug seizures in the country over the past 3 years. Drug Enforcement Unit Chief Superintendent Roberto Goodman says police are concerned because the edibles often come packaged in packaging that's attractive to children.
If we leave any of these items out and one of our kids take it up and is eating it thinking that it's a candy, then we found out that as long as they ingest this now and it's digested in their digestive system, then we have another problem. These drugs now cause hallucination, cause dizziness, cause vomiting.
Officers from DEU in Grand Bahama made a similar plea earlier this week. Goodman says 3 people have been arrested this year in relation to marijuana-infused edible products.
We see persons baking these brownies, these cake, and have these edibles out. And where persons are now consuming these unbeknown to the person. Like I say, any vendor, any person who found guilty, any person who found going contrary to this, like I say, we'll arrest them and place them before the court.
In other news, Bahamian women's basketball coach Yolette McPhee-McEwen getting a big reward for a job well done. Marcellus Hall tells us more.
All right, thanks a lot. Welcome to our Sports on a Thursday, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. They say hard work and results usually get rewarded. That was the case, certainly, for Coach Yolette McPhee-McEwen and the Ole Miss Lady Rebels. They put in the hard work. She is the head coach. Now she reaps the reward. Although still waiting on word about postseason tournament play, Coach Yolette McPhee-McEwen is certainly not waiting on a new contract. Following a breakthrough year with her Ole Miss ladies basketball program, Coach Yo agreeing to a new 4-year contract extension that will keep her installed as head coach through 2025. McPhee-McEwen coming off an exciting 3rd season at the helm of the Lady Rebels, coaching her squad to wins over 3 top-ranked opponents and culminating in a run to the quarterfinals of the SC tournament, their deepest run since 2010. And from track and field, Carifta will not be held at its usual time in Easter, but instead, NACAC, the governing body for track and field in the region, announcing that the championships will now take place August 13th through 15th, with Bermuda still set to be the host. NACAC President Mike Sands saying his organization will continue to work hand in hand with the Bermuda LOC, or local organizing committee, to ensure the safety of the participants. The Bahamas is expected to send a team to compete when those championships take place. And that's a look at sports for you here on this Thursday. Don't forget to join us tomorrow on The Locker Room for another exciting edition of our newest sports show. That's going to be right here on Cable 12. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you.
Still to come on our news, Greg Thompson is back in the Weather Center with the latest and the changing of the guard. Stay with us.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
Welcome back to our news. How's the weather looking for the rest of the week? Greg has the answer over in the weather studio.
Thanks again, Christina, and a happy Thursday evening, everybody. Persistent high pressure continues to generate some very strong winds across us, and that's producing those hazardous boating and beaching conditions. That high pressure system will eventually slide out towards the east, weakening somewhat, but we have a frontal boundary near the southeast Bahamas. That's going to be generating some isolated showers and possibly some thunderstorms across the southeastern islands over the next couple of days, but we do expect temperatures to continue to warm up into the weekend. Your boating forecast for all areas tonight through tomorrow. Your winds will be out of the northeast to east at 15 to 25 knots. Seas 5 to 8 feet over the ocean, but they will be up to 10 feet offshore in some moderate to large northeasterly swells. Your low tide will be at 12:53 in the morning. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look now at your extended forecast through Tuesday. A few more days of breezy conditions expected across islands. That's your look at weather. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Greg. The traditional changing of the guard taking place at police headquarters today. The guard is posted at the entrance gate of police headquarters and is responsible for the security of the police commissioner and other officers on the property. A number of former police officers were also honored by the Royal Bahamas Police Force as part of Police Month today. National Security Minister Marvin Dames and retired Assistant Commissioner of Police Samuel Butler were among the honorees.
For them It certainly means a lot because what it demonstrates is that they have not been forgotten.
And I certainly would want to say, particularly to our senior members of society, mature and senior members of society, we are the guardians, and we ought to do the best we can to ensure that we positively influence our younger generation.
The changing of the guard ceremony usually takes place every 3 months. Well, thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Christina Dragovich. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas. On the Record with Jerome Sawyer starts right now.